on Prime Crime. It's a rare glimpse into the mind of a killer.
I was in such a rage, I grabbed a hammer and just started bashing his skull in.
As we update the story of Adam Matos with an exclusive jailhouse interview.
I just reacted to the situation, shot him, shot her.
Everybody ends up dead. It is truly crazed overkill.
It was just a macabre scene.
What drove him to brutally murder 4 people? The answer may not be what you'd expect.
I love my son more than anything. I did what I did to protect him.
He wants to be the hero of Tristan's story, but he probably did more damage to that little boy than anyone could possibly ever conceive of.
Hey there, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber, and welcome to Prime Crime, where we break down some of the most compelling and memorable true crime cases from across the country. In this special episode of Prime Crime, we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to take a deeper dive into a shocking story that we already covered, the Adam Matos case, the man who brutally killed 4 people. In the last episode, we focused on the evidence, the interrogation, the trial, the verdict. But now, we get to sit down with the killer himself in this exclusive interview from behind bars.
This was just a horrible situation where 4 bodies are piled up on top of each other in the swamp.
It was brutal, it was savage, it was primal.
As you approached the residence and got into the residence, did you notice any odors?
I did. It was a really foul odor as I was coming into the garage.
Was the smell that you smelled consistent with that decomposing body smell?
Yes.
The Brown family was a close-knit family living in Pennsylvania. Greg and Margaret Brown were 52, and in 2014 they relocated to Florida, presumably to retire, but they took with them Megan and Tristan, and they took Adam Matos, who was going to go down there and live with them so that he could be close to his son.
Megan Brown was, I think, about 27 years old when this occurred. Megan Brown had a son, Tristan, who was 4 years old. Tristan's father was Adam Matos. He was kind of attaching himself to the Brown family, and I think that he was kind of had the makings of a drifter.
She's alleging that you threatened her, threatened to even kill her, and threatened her with a knife.
That's not true.
That's not true? Okay.
You know, she came home late and we just talked about it. We had an argument and she told me to leave.
On the morning of August 28th, 2014, this defendant, Adam Matos, threatened to kill the mother of his child, Megan Brown. And then later that day, he made good on his threat, came back and killed her parents, Greg and Margaret, and her new boyfriend, Nicholas Leonard.
The son of Adam and Megan, Tristan, who was 4 or 5 at the time and had autism, was in the house at the time of the murders and in the house for some period of time after the murders with the corpses.
This is a criminal case, and Mr. Matos is charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder.
He came in that house intending to kill these people. He hated those people and he was going to do them harm.
The prosecution's strategy of this trial was really to leave no room for doubt.
The evidence will show that this defendant, after killing these 4 people, sold their stuff, engaged in substantial cleanup, ultimately disposed of their bodies on Old Dixie Highway. And after you hear from all the witnesses and see all the evidence, we're going to ask you to find this defendant guilty of murder in the first degree.
All 12 jurors agreed he was guilty for each of the 4 murders.
Tristan full well knows what happened on that fateful day, and he continually repeats, "My daddy killed my mommy."
I sentence you to life without the possibility of parole. You will never, ever be released from prison.
Okay, so with that in mind, we are revisiting this case. Why? because we had the opportunity to meet with Adam Matos at Florida's Blackwater Correctional Facility. This is where he's serving 4 life sentences. This is our attempt to try to understand why he did what he did, and also how he feels about it now, 10 years later.
I am upset that I got 4 life sentences. It's pretty much the same every day. You know, wake up, eat breakfast, you know, we go to rec, we go to different groups, I go to church, and you know, I keep myself busy reading. You know, I just try to make the best out of my life, you know, what I have left.
It's always a fascinating experience to talk to someone and understand what the motivations are behind their behavior, especially with an act that's so horrific. You want to say to yourself, you know, this is a human being, I'm a human being. What is the difference between me and this person that they would be capable of something so savage?
We took Adam Matos back through the terrible day of the murders in 2014 and what followed to see what dark thoughts motivated these killings. It all seemed to start with problems he and Megan were having, although Matos appears to still be in denial.
When we were together, we were planning to get married, we were sleeping in the same bed.
The idea that he and Megan were just doing so well and were on a path to get married is completely belied by the fact that they're clearly not getting along, they're fighting. She calls the police on him. She's dating someone else, clearly.
Apparently they were seeing each other. I don't know how serious they were. They didn't even know each other long enough to even call themselves boyfriend and girlfriend. I mean, we were only there for 2 months.
I think he couldn't deal with the fact that she was slipping through his fingers. This was someone who felt so rejected and dejected and abandoned that he wasn't able to handle it. And I think that's why it erupted into violence.
On the morning of August 28, 2014, Matos was angry because Megan had been out late with friends. When she came home, they argued. Their 4-year-old son Tristan was in the room when Adam threatened Megan, and she called 911.
Massacre County 911. What is your name?
Megan Brown.
Tell me exactly what happened, Megan.
I just came home and my son's dad put a knife to my throat and he cut my ear and I'm like bleeding everywhere and my son's freaking out. I really don't want to do this in front of him.
Matos left the house before police arrived, leaving Megan with only minor injuries to her hand. But later that day, he returned, supposedly to tie up loose ends before leaving for good.
Well, when I went home, I was going to talk to Megan and say goodbye to Tristan, and I didn't have much time left to be with my son.
But this time, someone else was there besides Tristan and Megan, her new boyfriend.
I was confronted by Nicholas Leonard, and when I came into the room, he had attacked me. And that's when the whole situation started.
Adam Matos clearly viewed Nicholas Leonard as the perpetrator of all this. He blamed Nick Leonard for everything that happened that day, and subsequently, he 100% felt that Nicholas Leonard is the reason that anybody is dead.
He pulled out a pistol, and you know, my life was in danger at that point, and I had to get the pistol out of his hand. So we're fighting for the pistol. Megan runs out the room with Tristan, and you know, we're wrestling around the room. I'm trying to get the pistol out of his hand, and I found a knife on the dresser, and I used the knife to stab him in the arm, and he started leaking blood all over the room, and we're wrestling for the gun.
But the question remains, why didn't Adam leave when he first saw Nicholas?
There were so many off-ramps that you can see as this story progresses from his own telling, where a reasonable person would say, you could have done all of these things to just de-escalate and leave the situation where nobody had to die. But at every turn, he escalates. He makes things worse.
Matos and Nicholas continue to scuffle.
We ended up on the floor after wrestling for the gun, and her father comes in with a rifle, and she's telling her father to shoot me. So I tell her father, please don't shoot me, Greg, don't do this. I've known these people for, close to a decade. For him to shoot me, that was pretty crazy, and it was a shock, to be staring at a rifle, from someone I know and love and care about.
To hear Adam talk about that and say, oh, we've known each other for a decade, I loved you, how could you do that? That doesn't make sense. Because if that was really true, there's no way that Greg Brown's first instinct would be to run in with a firearm with his daughter, the mother of his child, encouraging the dad to shoot Adam.
And so he pulls the trigger, and the gun malfunctioned. So while her father was trying to get the gun to work, I was able to get the pistol out of Nicholas Leonard's hand. And that's when a shot went off, and I shot him. So at that point, her father and Megan, they run to the master bedroom, and I ran to the master bedroom. I wasn't even thinking. It was just like reaction to what just happened when he was in the closet loading up another rifle, and I shot him 2 times.
But again, this is another point when Matos could have left instead of pursuing them into the bedroom.
Matos could get up and say, Greg, I'm going, call the police. This was self-defense. I'm leaving. There were so many different opportunities for him to make reasonable, responsible decisions, and he doesn't.
There was also a very practical side to it, which is for his own protection, I think he had to eliminate any living witnesses that could potentially testify against him, because these were people that all saw what he did to the other people in the house. But I don't think that, except for Tristan, he was going to let any adult live in that house once he got started.
Megan was standing in the room, and that's when I shot her. She looked like she had a weapon in her hand. Later I found out it was a cell phone, but it looked like a pistol. And I didn't even think, I just shot her.
The way that he talks about killing Tristan's mother is so robotic. He comes across as completely emotionally dead. He doesn't ever say, I was shocked, I couldn't believe it, I was so upset. I guess to him, the minute she encouraged her father, Greg, to shoot him, that was it. That was her attempting to kill him.
She was just trash that he disposed of at that point. I don't think he felt any emotional connection to her after that.
It was just shocking that she was ready to kill me to protect some guy that she just met in a bar. I've known her for nearly a decade. We have a child together.
The fact that they had a son together, in his mind, I think felt like a betrayal of the worst kind, and he was gonna make her pay for that.
When I checked on Nicholas Leonard, I was just so angry at what happened. I was in such a rage because of what he did, coming to my house with a weapon, causing this to happen. I grabbed a hammer and just started bashing his skull in.
When you're talking about the victims here being bludgeoned with a hammer, there is no viewing of that is just not unadulterated rage taking over, that triggered something inside of him that on a personal level pushed him over the edge.
But Adam Matos wasn't finished, because one member of the family still hadn't come home from work. Margaret Brown didn't return from her job at a convenience store for hours.
And then he devolves into this sitting for hours, brooding, paranoia, and then when she comes home, he really thinks she's going to harm him or kill him, so he has to kill her also.
When her mother came home, that's when I just reacted. I thought she would try to kill me too. That's when I attacked her and also used the hammer on her. Being in a life-threatening situation when people are about to kill you, you automatically go into like a defense mode. Your reptilian part of your brain kicks in and you're not even thinking logically, you know, all rational thought just goes out the window. So at that point, it was just survive.
When people use the term lizard brain, it's very primal, and it's the center of fear, aggression, rage, and I think that's sort of where he was operating, where he was in this zone, where he wasn't being logical, where he wasn't thinking it through. It was just pure aggression.
After that, I went and checked on Tristan. He was in his room, made sure he was okay, and I told him, you know, stay in his room and don't come out until I tell you to do so.
There is an amazing ability to detach, to compartmentalize. And I think in this case, that's what's happening. I think there was all that rage, there was all that passion around these crimes, but then his instincts as a father kicks in. I have to protect my son. I have to make sure he's okay. So I do think that at some level, in his own way, he did love his son, despite these despicable, horrific crimes that he committed.
Coming up, in the days after the brutal murders, the nightmare isn't over. Adam Matos and Tristan face a horrifying reality.
I didn't know what to do. You know, these 4 bodies in the house, you know, what do I do? And I wanted to leave, but I didn't know where to go. And so I just got the bodies out of the house. I believe I got them out the very same night, but they had to sit in the garage till the next day.
After Adam Matos murdered Megan Brown, her parents Greg and Margaret Brown, and her new boyfriend Nicholas Leonard, Matos and his son Tristan find themselves living in a true house of horrors. They're sharing a home with 4 decomposing bodies.
I don't really remember much. It was kind of hazy, you know, but I do remember being in shock, you know, from what just happened. I really didn't know what to do. I was just winging it, you know, day to day, just trying to survive the next day. When Tristan went to sleep, that's when I moved the bodies to the garage. It was very, very disturbing moving the bodies, the smell, just the whole process. It was very disturbing. And it was hard to move them by myself, so I had to use ropes to tie around the midsection to get, you know, leverage. I had to use a dolly to get them in the minivan.
These are people that he had, you know, somewhat daily interactions with, and now they're basically lying there covered in blood, and he's moving them, and that may have been why he had that reaction once that initial rage was over with.
I've had many nightmares about this situation, and throughout the years, it doesn't get any easier. In the beginning, I used to have nightmares of bodies under the floor and just wondering if people in the house were smelling it, you know, different dreams like that. And I would wake up, you know, crying, you know, shaking. I believe it's PTSD.
Matos manages to wrap up the bodies and load them into Margaret Brown's van and then drives away.
There was an abandoned road, and that's where I took them, and there was just a spot next to the bushes. I made sure he didn't see any of it because I didn't want him, you know, having nightmares and, you know, being shocked. You know, he already been through enough just being there.
Tristan is autistic, and we know that kids with autism have problems with sensory processing. Maybe noises might seem louder to them. Things they see might be more intense. It could actually make the trauma that much worse for them.
I can only imagine, you know, how he was handling this situation at such a young age. So I tried to protect him from it as much as possible.
It seems clear to me that he did understand. I don't know if he actually saw it or he just heard it, but to me, that's trauma that I don't know that he'll ever be able to overcome.
So this child, who's very young, who's on the spectrum, who's barely verbal, is there with, you know, essentially his father living in conditions that are just absolutely horrific, that you wouldn't imagine even possible for a father to do to their own child.
He was silent for most of it. I think he was experiencing some type of trauma, and he seemed sad, and I just tried to keep him cheerful as much as possible. And he kept asking questions like, where's mom, where's mammy, where's pappy? And it just broke my heart because I didn't know what to tell him. And all I could tell him was, they're not here.
Tristan does seem to be the only thing that Adam Matos really cares about in the world. And yet at the same time, it's really troublesome and difficult to hear how matter-of-factly he talks about what had to be an incredibly traumatic experience for his son.
Up next, after Adam Matos gets rid of the bodies, the story only gets stranger.
I started ordering pizza so Tristan could have something to eat. I didn't have much money. I started selling the stuff in the house. I started selling the dogs, and it was just money to survive.
Hey everybody, we really appreciate you guys following the special Prime Crime with us. And look, one of the reasons we're able to produce a show like this is because of the incredible support that we get from our sponsors, like our proud partner, Morgan & Morgan. Look, here's the deal. If you should get injured, America's largest injury law firm, that may be who you want on your side. I mean, they have an army of over 1,000 attorneys. They have an amazing track record, like recent verdicts of $12 million in Florida and $26 million in Philadelphia. These, by the way, are higher than the highest insurance offers in these cases. There's no upfront fee. They only get paid if you get paid. And the whole process can be done right from your smartphone. So if you're injured, you can easily start a claim at forthepeople.com/primecrime.
As much as I would like to go back and change what happened, there was really no other option. The clock is ticking. It's just survival. There's nothing else you can do.
Adam Matos and his 4-year-old son Tristan were in the house alone for a week after Matos murdered Tristan's mom, grandparents, and Tristan's mom's boyfriend. Matos had to feed his son and make some money, but the way he went about it is just bizarre, like selling the dogs the family had been breeding.
We had 20 dogs. Her mom was a dog breeder of rare breeds like Labradoodles. There was always a mess from the dogs. I couldn't take care of them. The state would have eventually, took them, and I don't know what was gonna happen to them. Maybe they would have been euthanized. So I started selling the dogs. And they needed a better home anyways.
At Matos' trial, several of the people who bought the dogs testified.
Your intention was to buy more than one dog?
Yes, sir.
Tell Dre how many dogs you were looking at.
Anywhere from 2 to 4. He said he had 10 puppies. I believe it was supposed to be $50 a dog. I asked why he was selling them so inexpensive, and he kind of laughed and said him and his girlfriend were having problems, they need the money.
I think he was pretty emotionally detached at that point. I mean, he was selling their possessions, selling puppies, just being in the same house where those bodies were. To me, it's pretty gruesome that he was able to do that. It came across as very, very cold-blooded.
I really didn't know what was, going through my mind at that point. I was worried about what these people were thinking, would they smell the decomp? Would they ask questions,
Was there something of particular note that you may have smelled when you got out of the car?
Yeah, very foul smell.
When you get to the front door, did someone come to the door?
Yes.
All right, and was he holding anything?
A puppy and a towel.
All right. The puppy and a towel, did it appear to have been recently bathed?
Yes.
Was there any other person that you had contact with from the residence?
Yes, a little boy. A little boy steps behind the man and then waves, who was wearing Spider-Man underwear, and then kind of just stood off in the back of the hallway.
All right. Did you and your mother ever go into the residence?
No.
All right. And you guys were there to purchase a dog. Did you in fact purchase a dog?
Yes, we did.
When you took, possession of the dog, how did the dog smell?
Terrible. We went home and gave it like 2 or 3 more baths.
Well, a few people did ask about the smell. They said, there's something foul smelling outside, and I told them it was the sewage system.
I think there's a lot of denial, there's a lot of rationalization. There's a lot of displacement, all these defense mechanisms that he's using to protect his psyche from these uncomfortable and horrific feelings.
I was really like starting to lose it mentally. It took a lot of time to realize the, the seriousness of the situation, I didn't really start to let it sink in yet. I was just trying to keep my sanity and trying to hold on to, that human part of me.
As the days go by, Matos tries to figure out what to do next.
I really didn't have a plan because, this wasn't planned, it just happened. When you have a child with you, you really can't run. I was thinking about turning myself in, but I was still in shock of what just happened. People were trying to shoot me, so I didn't want to call the cops and have them shoot me or put Tristan's life in danger. So that's what I was really concerned of, the police getting involved and start pulling out their pistols and putting Tristan in danger.
There's absolutely no indication that anyone else has ever given that Tristan was in any sort of danger. And yet he keeps using that as an excuse for why he had to do what he did. It's self-defense, it's defense of Tristan.
About a week after the murders, a relative of the Brown family grows increasingly concerned that no one is answering phone calls. So she asks police to do a welfare check. When officers arrive, Adam Matos finally takes action.
I just wanted to get Tristan out of there and get him to safety. So when the officers started knocking on the door, I woke up Tristan and told him it was time to go. And the officer started looking around the house, and he entered the garage where the minivan was. And that's when he discovered the bloody rugs. And at that point, I knew he was going to call backup, and I didn't have much time to get out of there. So I quickly got Tristan dressed and got out of the house. At that point, I was just worrying about Tristan, getting him somewhere where he can get something to eat and lay down. And I knew, my time was running out with him, and, I was just trying to spend as much time as I can with him at that point.
He wants to be the hero of Tristan's story. And so as much as he wants to believe that he is the one out there who was really trying to protect Tristan, the reality, which he cannot come to grips with, is he probably did more damage to that little boy than anyone could possibly ever conceive of.
As police canvass the area, they find the bodies on the side of a road near the house.
After the suspiciousness that of the nature of the scene that we had there, I decided to take a ride north along Old Dixie Highway. It's basically an undeveloped area, wetlands and fields, a dirt road. I had my windows open, and I smelled a smell that, basically smell of death, basically is what it is.
And did you have an opportunity to get out and investigate further?
Yeah, I parked my car, called dispatch, let them know that I was at where I was and I was getting out of my car. And then I continued to walk and followed a little trail through the grass there until the smell got very strong, and then I was able to actually see the bodies.
I'm trying to get out, undetected so the cops doesn't see us. And that's when I saw helicopters flying around, and I guess they were searching for the bodies. And I knew that I had to turn myself in soon. I couldn't keep this up any longer because I was putting Tristan in danger by doing that.
Matos has nowhere specific to go, but he and Tristan wind up in Tampa about an hour away.
We get to the Floridan Palace Hotel and we check in, and I used my ID. At that point I knew it was over. I had to turn myself in, and I wanted to do it on my own terms, somewhere in a safe place. I got a call around 5 o'clock in the morning, and that's when they told me to come down to the front desk to get another room because the electricity wasn't working in that part of the hotel. And I knew that it was some type of trick to get me down there. So I hung up the phone and I checked on Tristan and I gave him a kiss and I told him I love him. And you know, it was hard to leave him because I knew that was the last time I was gonna see him. So I looked at him one last time and I left the room. And when I got to the end of the hallway, the SWAT team was waiting for me. And that's when they, you know, took me down, arrested me, and it was all over from there.
He is almost looking at kind of like a movie as he's talking about it and watching the events play out. And it's almost as though he's not even there, as a kind of a way of self-preservation so that he doesn't have to cope with the fact that he brutally murdered 4 people.
Coming up, when Adam Matos' case finally goes to trial 3 years later, he faces the death penalty.
I could have been on death row. I could be spending my last years waiting for death.
By the way, we used Truthfinder, the powerful background checker, to do a little bit more digging into Adam Matos. It is so easy to do. You just plug in a name and location, and then you get all these details where someone lives, works, their criminal history. He didn't have a criminal history according to Truthfinder. And look, Truthfinder has been very useful for us here at Law&Crime. We partner with them. But even if you don't work in true crime, it can be an excellent resource to give you some peace of mind. After all, it's one of the largest public records search services in the United States. And with a paid subscription service, you can get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone. And that includes looking up registered sex offenders that might be in an area. And right now, if you're interested, you can get 50% off of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/LCPrimeCrime.
The state attorney, they make up all types of lies to make me look like a monster. I mean, most of the stuff they put in trial is just lies.
At Adam Matos' trial in 2017, he faced 4 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of his ex-girlfriend Megan Brown, her parents Greg and Margaret, and her new boyfriend Nicholas Leonard. Since the killings were so savage, it seemed like an almost certain win for the prosecution and a death sentence for Matos. But then, his defense attorney came up with a plan.
Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about self-defense. At the close of the evidence, the close of all the evidence, I will ask that you find that Adam Matos is not guilty of any first-degree premeditated murder.
Having heard Adam Matos tell his own story, it may not seem as shocking now, but when he took the stand and admitted to each killing and explained his motivation, it was as if a bombshell dropped.
Let's cut right to the chase, shall we? Adam Matos, on August 28, 2014, did Nicholas Leonard put his hands on your throat?
Yes, he did.
Did he threaten your life with a gun?
Yes, he did.
Did you get in a fight with him?
Yes.
Did you defend yourself?
Yes, I did.
Did you kill him?
Yes.
Why?
He tried to kill me. I felt like it went well, and I knew what they would say, you know, questions they would ask, how to answer certain questions.
Adam Matos, on August 28, 2014, was Megan Brown with Gregory Brown when he tried to shoot you with his rifle?
Yes.
Did she say anything as he was pointing his rifle at you?
She said, "Dad, shoot him. Shoot him, Dad."
Did you kill her?
Yes.
What did you do then?
I lost it completely. I just realized that I killed the woman that I love, the mother of my child. And at that point, I realized that Tristan no longer had a mother. He no longer had a grandfather. And he no longer had me. And at that point, I felt like my life was over.
But while Matos does his best to testify in his own defense, no one else speaks up for his character or actions.
Since there's no witnesses to testify on my behalf and say he was acting in self-defense, the only person that could have done that is Tristan. I think they should have brought Tristan in as a witness. He remembers, so he would be able to tell them that, yes, my father was in danger. His life was, threatened, and he had to defend himself. He had to defend me. I believe if he was there as a witness, I might have got lesser charges, at least on the first 3 counts.
Adam Matos' idea that somehow calling Tristan might have helped him is absurd. It is absolutely absurd. If a jury heard that this happened while the boy was in the house, and just getting the visual of that child as a 4-year-old being in the vicinity of this carnage, that puts Matos in death penalty camp. He is getting executed.
Adam Matos, the jury has reached their verdict.
We, the jury, finds as follows. The defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree as to Nicholas Leonard, as charged in the indictment.
One of the few people who did speak on Matos' behalf is his mother, Rose, but it isn't until the penalty phase of the trial when jurors consider whether he should get life in prison or death. She describes her son's troubled childhood, hoping it'll mitigate some of the evidence against him and keep him off death row.
Where was Adam's father while he was growing up?
He was doing his thing. I don't know. He was doing his life. He didn't care. He didn't want anything to, he apologized to Adam, but he had his life and he chose drinking beer and carrying on.
Was he ever involved in Adam's life?
No.
Did Adam ever meet him?
Yes.
How many times?
Maybe 3 times.
Did he ever stay with him?
No.
Matos' mom says his grandfather added to the problems at home.
My dad, he was alcoholic. He was verbally and physically abusive. He used to scare Adam, and it's a pop don't scare him. He's just a little boy. And Adam would just run behind me. And he did it a couple times where it was tough to see Adam, frightened. He was frightened.
There was a lot of violence. I saw a lot of stuff as a child that I shouldn't have seen. And I think that affected the way that I grew up. And I definitely didn't want to see that repeat with my son. I didn't have my father in my life, and I tried so hard to be in his life. And that was just, my dream, to be a good father and be in his life. That's all I ever wanted.
People who suffer adverse childhood experiences have much higher rates of mental illness, so it could very well have played into his ability to regulate his emotions and control his impulses. It doesn't absolve him of responsibility for what he did.
Adam Matos is spared the death penalty, but before the judge sentences him, she has something to say.
This was the most selfish, self-centered, evil thing that I've ever heard. That you took the stand and you said that you did all of this for your son is ridiculous.
Judge Hansel said that I didn't love my son, and she said that I was a selfish person and that I didn't care about Megan or Tristan. And that's just ignorant. She doesn't know what we went through in that house. She doesn't know what type of people the Browns were. I think they made them out to be like such a picture-perfect American family, and I think that's why they wanted to get the death penalty so much, is because they felt like this guy's a monster and he just killed 4 great Americans.
He thinks he is the victim. Now he's the one who's suffering. He's the one who's in prison, and he's incapable of looking inside and saying, if it wasn't for Adam Matos, he wouldn't be there.
Is there anything that defense wants to present or any statements the defendant wants to make before I enter the sentence?
I would just like to say I'm sorry to the victims of the family. I know that's not enough, but I just would like to make peace and hope that they don't hold on to that hate in their heart, because a heart filled with hate is not free. I'm truly sorry.
I think someone basically, said something and screamed at him, because to stand there and say you're sorry for what you did when you've done everything you can to try to avoid responsibility, it doesn't ring true, and it comes across very disingenuous.
It was so bad. It was so accusatory. You've just been convicted of murdering 4 people, and your response is to say, I hope you guys don't live with hate because, you know, a heart filled with hate isn't free. I mean, I thought the gallery was actually somewhat subdued in how they could have responded to something that was so tone deaf.
For a long time, I had a lot of hate in my heart towards Nicholas and Megan and her father for what they did to me, what they did to Tristan. And it took me a long time to forgive them, but that's something you have to do to get through the grieving process. And it's helped a lot by learning to forgive Megan and forgive her father, Gregory, and forgive Nicholas for putting my life in danger, for putting Tristan's life in danger, and for trying to kill me. But I do forgive them.
He doesn't, as far as I can tell, feel bad about this. He doesn't seem to understand that he was wrong to do this. He thinks that the universe played a terrible trick on him and put him in a situation where he had no choice but to do this, and that's why he's in the situation he's in. So in order to be the bigger man, he has done his internal searching and found a way to forgive them for his situation.
I sentence you to life without the possibility of parole. You will never, ever be released from prison.
They didn't know deep down that these people were monsters. I'm not going to say I'm father of the year for the stuff that I did, but definitely they're not good people for putting Tristan's life in danger, putting my life in danger.
I mean, if anyone would look at this situation, they would see him as the monster. But again, to take the focus off him and deal with his own uncomfortable feelings, he projects it onto them.
He has dehumanized these people to the point where they're monsters. He has really programmed his own mind to completely justify everything that he did.
As for Tristan, he's 15 now. He lives with relatives of his mom, but at least at the time of the trial, he still appeared to bear the scars of what happened.
He has told us on countless occasions that my daddy is in jail and he will never get out and he can never hurt me. He loves his mother, he loves his grandparents, and he loves us. He does not love you. He saw what you did, he heard what you did. You did not keep him safe, and you did not care about him. You stole his whole world. You ruined his whole life, and we are here to pick up the pieces. He is loved, he is special, and he has a family.
I love my son more than anything, and I think about him every single day, and I hope that he's doing well. I know he's in a good place with a good family, and I know that they're raising him to be a good man, and I just want him to be better than I was, to make the right decisions in life and not do bad. One day I would definitely love to see him again and explain to him why that happened. I would tell Tristan that I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry that he grew up without his biological parents and without his grandfather and his grandmother. I wish I could take it all back and change it. I truly do. I dream about Tristan all the time. All the time I dream about him and just living with him, and then I wake up and I'm like, I'm in prison. And that hurts.
I think Tristan is the only good thing that he has left in his life. And I think it's the only thing that he has worth living for at this point that can keep him going on the inside.
Just an incredible interview when you think about it. And first, I have to thank our amazing producer, Lisa Feit, for arranging this with the prison, conducting this conversation with Adam Matos. Great work. And look, this is still such an incredibly sad and disturbing story for everybody involved. And while hearing it from Adam Matos does give us kind of a different perspective, we got to be clear about something. There is no excuse for what he did. And yes, he lost his freedom. But for Tristan and those who died at Adam Matos' hands, they lost so much more. That's all we have for you here on this special edition of Prime Crime. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jesse Weber, and until next time, stay safe.